What do you think that role is that you play here in Washington?
Oh, if I had to describe my role, I would say being that that voice in the center, kind of a moderating voice, one that is comfortable going between both conferences, talking to people, trying to understand how we get to yes, a collaborator, one who is willing to work hard and not really concerned about who gets the credit.
You've represented Alaska for more than 2 decades,
Yeah.
but you never expected to be a U.S. Senator.
Never wanted to be. No, I wanted to be a teacher. I knew I was going to be a teacher. That kind of fell apart when I was challenged by my economics professor in my sophomore year of college. He's like, "You're not paying attention, you're not getting this, you should drop my class or I'm going to fail you." And I was so offended that he did not believe that I had the potential, the capability to pull it out. That not only did I stay in his class, but I switched my major from education to economics. And I don't know if it was to spite him. I think it does say a little bit about my personality. But I got my degree in economics, and I didn't like economics, not at all. But I felt like it was forcing me to learn something that was serious, right? This was going to be important going forward.
I feel like this is the independence streak early on.
Yeah. Very early on.
When you joined the Senate, you were only the 32nd woman in American history to be part of the world's greatest deliberative body. How have things changed?
Well, certainly the number of women has changed dramatically. Dramatically. I came in 32nd, not very many, right? And at the time I entered the Senate, there were 12 of us, 12 women that were serving. So it was a pretty small group. And I think there was a collegiality that was very apparent, and it was good. We would have our women dinners organized most of the time by Barbara Murkowski, but opportunities to just connect as women, women with challenging jobs.
And also to maybe trade some stories about
the
guys in the Senate?
Well, we would say that if we were running the place, things would be different.
Different how?
Different, probably more collaborative, probably more timely, probably more disciplined to a process. Anyway, we're now.
Meaning it would run better, the United States Senate?
I think we would have a certain level of efficiency. We do talk about that.
You're a Republican in Washington who has never voted for Donald Trump. That's not easy. Well,
My vote, my views, and so for me, it was the decision that I made. I have a hard time voting kind of for the lesser of two evils, if you will. I want to be a proactive voter. I want to vote for somebody who I believe in. And so I've made that choice. When the Republican nominee, in this instance, Donald Trump, was not my choice, I wrote in the names of other individuals who I believed could be a good president. Obviously, I didn't prevail in that.
And what about your constituents who say now they are afraid?
I have shared with them that that fear. I feel that fear. They share it with me. They share it with me, and as I feel connected to them, that fear is real. And so I can't tell them, don't worry, don't be afraid. I have to say, I feel that too. And I think part of the connection that I have to, again, those who continue to support me, is what they're hoping is that I will be honest with them and that I'll be genuine with them. They may not like every vote that I make, and they'll tell me that. they'll say, oh, gosh, I can't believe that you voted for so-and-so, but I trust you, Lisa. And that's the greatest gift. That's the greatest responsibility I could have, is when somebody says, I'm trusting you to do the right thing. And so if you're trusting me to do the right thing, I've got to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. And I can't say, you know, quite frankly, things are fine right now, because I don't feel that they are.
You've said we are all afraid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Afraid of what?
So let's put it into context. I was speaking with a group of about 500 to 500 folks in Anchorage, all associated with the nonprofit world. This was several months ago, when grants had been just completely cut off, or grants had been frozen or paused. There was nobody in the agencies or the departments that could let people know whether or not this grant is going to be forthcoming. So I'm talking to managers of domestic violence shelters that are saying, I don't have any other choice but to shut down. And when I shut down the shelter, those women have no place to go. There are no alternatives.
This is because of the Doge cuts.
They're the Doge cuts. They're the rumors that we started hearing that were taking hold. But it was very, very, very real, is still very real. And so when I'm dealing with the reality on the ground of how this is impacting people who are, again, so many of them caring for the most vulnerable, but it's not just those who are trying to deal with a women's shelter. It's the community that's been trying to get a small hydro project in for the past 10 years, and they're this close to making it happen. So when they say, you know, we are afraid, I say we're all afraid, because I'm afraid of what is happening to you and your community when you can't get affordable energy, when you're going to have to go back to diesel. I'm afraid because when you can't operate that shelter, women out there are vulnerable to the point that they may be missing, murdered, or killed. You know, there are real life consequences to this, and so we just can't say, well, we've got to reduce the budget, and it doesn't matter how we do it. It does matter. And so I worry for them. And I also said, retaliation is real, because we were seeing it. So it's not like Lisa Murkowski is feeling threatened. I am not feeling that I am personally threatened by an individual that's going to call me up and say, you know, you have to vote for this person or that person. But I think we have seen actions out of the administration. We are seeing actions out of the administration where we're saying this is just beyond the norm.
You've warned your Republican Senate colleagues not to cede ground to President Trump. How's that going?
Well, just to put it into context and be fair, I don't think that we should cede, the congressional branch, should cede ground to anybody, not to the courts, not to the executive. I think we have a role to do. We cannot, whether it is with tariffs, whether it is with spending, whether it's the role of advice and consent, we have a role that is prescribed under Article 1 of the Constitution. We need to take that seriously. And I fear that what we're seeing more and more is a Republican conference in both the House and the Senate that may agree with the goals of President Trump. And so they're good with however we get there. But we need to ask ourselves, if this was President Biden, or if this were to be a President Booker, how would we respond? Because I don't think we would just sit back and say, it's okay that you use that.
You think there would be more oversight?
I think there would. If not oversight, at least feigned outrage. But we are basically saying, whatever way you want to get there, is going to be okay because
Is that a
we like the
capitulation by the U.S. Congress?
I think it's Congress not doing their job.
Alaska relies more heavily on federal funding and programs than perhaps any other state in the country. Are you worried that your constituents may be punished for your independence?
I realize that my job number one is to be effective for Alaska. And so I have to be aware that my effectiveness is going to be tied to relationships, right? And so how I am able to develop relationships in an administration where it is no secret that I did not support the president, and it's also no secret that the president did not support me. He actively campaigned against me in the state, but at the end of the day, he won, I won. He's got to figure out how to get his agenda advanced, and I'm going to have to figure out how I get Alaska's agenda advanced. And there's going to be many areas where we're going to be in total sync. And believe me, on the Alaska resource areas of opportunity, we are there, and I'm looking forward to that. But I've also got to figure out how I address the concerns of large Native constituency. So I need to have a working relationship with the Secretary of Health and Social Services because IHS, Indian Health Service, is so key. I have to be able to have that relationship with the Secretary of Interior because 60% of Alaska's lands are federally held, whether it's Park Service, Forest Service, BLM. And so making these relationships work is something that matter to me. And do I like all of the things? If it were my pick for a particular cabinet nominee, would I have selected that individual? No. But do I feel that there are avenues of opportunity for me to be helpful to Alaskans with this person?
Well, you voted for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be the new Secretary of Health and Human Services. Is he helpful to Alaskans now that he has replaced everybody on the vaccine committee?
I don't like what he did on the vaccine committee.
Do you regret your vote for him?
People have asked me if I regret my vote. I don't get any do-overs. I just don't. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time saying I regret the vote. I do not like what he has just done with vaccines, and I don't like what he has said with regards to vaccine in other areas. I do like and I appreciate very much what he is doing to help us when it comes to Indian Health Services. I also know that there's a lot of Alaskans who think that he is absolutely on the right track when it comes to chronic diseases. We have some of the highest rates of diabetes in the country, and so much of that is linked to what we have seen with a change in lifestyle, from a healthy lifestyle living off the land to really a world of processed foods. And so there's a real connection there. So is he 100% for me? No. Is he somebody that I can have that conversation with and have him come back with me, to me with answers? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the massive reconciliation bill, the so-called big, beautiful bill. Do you think it's ultimately going to pass?
It's what we're defining as it, right? There is
something is going to pass.
Something is going to pass. Something is going to pass. But right now, it is clearly being defined. I mean, we know what the House was capable of sending over. Probably fair to say that there are many on the House side who were not exactly enamored of that big, beautiful bill. They didn't think they thought it was maybe too big and not beautiful enough. We still have a great deal of work to do. I still have significant reservations about the impact to many Alaskans with the Medicaid proposals, the SNAP proposals. I believe that some of the provisions related to energy tax credits are significant not only to my state, but to the broader economic security in the country.
Senator, you're one of the key votes the Republican Party needs you to pass this big bill. What's an absolute no for you?
I have not given anybody in the administration an absolute, this is my red line, right? Because I think it's important that every step of the way I communicate where my concerns are. So I've been pretty clear that when it comes to Medicaid, those cuts that would harm Alaskan beneficiaries, that's not something that I can take home, right? We have some of the highest healthcare costs in the country. We have 40% of Alaska's kids that are on Medicaid. I want to try to do what we can to address certain aspects of our entitlement spending. We've got to do that. But doing it with the most vulnerable bearing the brunt of that is not the answer.
One more thing on the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. From Alaska, you have a unique perspective and ability to see firsthand the effects of climate change. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Your party has proposed rolling back a number of these green energy proposals. What would that do?
Well, I think it's important to understand the benefit that comes to a state like Alaska when you are able to kind of find your own energy solutions that will help us with a changing and a warming climate, right? 80% of the communities in the state of Alaska are not connected by road. If you're not connected by a road, think about it, you're probably not connected to anybody's energy grid. So everybody's off on their own little islanded, they're living off of diesel. That's not sustainable. And so how we're able to take a little wind, maybe a little bit of solar, got some battery storage. You can get your communities off diesel, maybe not 100%, but if you can get them off 40%, you're saving that little community hundreds of thousands of dollars that they didn't have before, right? But these are all part of the things that were in some of these grants that were frozen or just discarded altogether. And these are investments that we're trying to make so that our communities can be more sustainable. Because if you don't have affordable energy out into these remote areas, it's really, really, really hard to live. And it also answers how we help contribute to ways that are reducing our emissions. We don't need to be burning diesel to power our communities in the year 2025. And that's what we're dealing with in so many places. And so when you look at what we're seeing in Alaska with thawing permafrost, with the sea ice receding and opening of the oceans, a warming of the oceans, it's impacting our fisheries, which is food security. It's threatening our
country.
Homes.
60% of the country gets its seafood from Alaska.
Seafood is our economy in so many areas, but it's threatening infrastructure, airstrips, schools. We've been working to move a small community of Newtok for the entire time I've been in the United States Senate, and we've just about made the move, and it's a good thing because the old school is literally falling into the ocean, and so this is not some Green New Deal where it's designed to enrich the environmental lobby community. I don't know. This is to make a difference in the lives of people who live in areas where their options are limited, but their very lifestyle is also threatened. Mm-hmm. So how can we help them?
Let's talk about some of the other stuff you talk about in the book.
Okay.
Overturning Roe versus Wade. Mm-hmm. You said you don't accept responsibility for the overturning of Roe versus Wade, but you voted for 2 of the 3 Supreme Court justices that helped with the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe versus Wade. Don't you bear some responsibility?
I think those justices that I voted for that were part of the decision, as well as the justices that I have had an opportunity to vote for over the years, those men and women will make the determinations that they feel are in alignment with the law. Do I agree with their decisions all of the time or part of the time? Not necessarily. All I can do is do my due diligence.
You are a Catholic Republican who supports abortion rights, correct?
Correct.
You voted for 2 of the 3 Trump Supreme Court justices, not Kavanaugh, who moved to overturn Roe versus Wade. Do you accept any responsibility for that?
I do not accept responsibility for the fact that they made decisions and determinations to the best of their ability. I don't like the determination that they came up with. I don't like that. But I cannot look at an individual and say, you might vote one way on one issue at some future point in time. And so therefore, I am going to disqualify you.
But I want to challenge you on that,
Okay.
because you and Senator Collins did ask them questions about that. Am I
Oh,
right?
absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely.
You write in the book
Yeah.
that you never imagined the extreme possibility, those are your words, that Roe versus Wade could be completely overturned.
Exactly, based on the representations that were made to me in my office, what they had said publicly.
So did they mislead you?
I think I actually asked that question of myself in the book, right? Was I misled? Or did they say what they needed to say, which was, this is settled precedent. This is well-defined. This is years. This is not just 5 years. This is almost 50 years.
You voted against Justice Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
But not because of the allegations by Christine Blasey Ford, but you said he had a temperament issue. Explain what that means.
When I look at a nominee's qualifications to be a Supreme Court justice, do they know the law? You don't get there without knowing the law, all right? You have to have a commitment to be free from bias, but you also are required, certainly under Alaska's judicial canons, to demonstrate a level of temperance. You have to have a temperament that, again, I would say is a cut above what we would expect of anybody else. And the reason being that you've got to be somebody that is not only fair and balanced, but you have to be one who is viewed as being measured in how you are weighting and evaluating the matter that you have in front of you.
You write in the book that you had a private meeting with him in which you talked about it, and you sort of said to him, do you understand, though, how these allegations are making women across the country feel who may have experienced issues of harassment or sexual assault? And you found his answer insincere, I think is the word that you used, or not convincing.
I said that he did not have that self-awareness. And it is perhaps that it was so in the moment, if you will. This was, as I said afterwards, after the vote, this was a very hard thing for him and his family. It was an awful process he went through. I think we would all concede to that. But I wasn't asking him. I wasn't asking him to tell me, did you do it or did you not do it? That wasn't the point of it. It was, are you aware of what has happened as a consequence of what people have seen on national TV, where you have a woman saying, this happened to me, and it was awful. And instead of the discussion about, is Justice Kavanaugh qualified, the conversation was more about women being believed that at a time of trauma in their life, when they have confronted it, if they are to be believed. And so it was not so much, was he guilty? Mm-hmm. And I say that in air quotes because it was not as if he was on trial. This was nothing like that. But it was a matter of, are you aware that this has brought out such passion and such emotion from so many women around the country? And it has opened a wound and a scar, and hopefully it's going to get better. And I actually think that we have made great strides, since the time of the Me Too, where again, there has been a greater willingness for women to speak up. I think we've been seeing good action in certain areas that were hidden before, whether it's murdered and missing Indigenous women, whether it's what we're seeing and how we're dealing with various, whether it's assault in the workplace, in the military. I think we've made good progress as a result of that. But he didn't get it. He couldn't acknowledge it. And what it showed me was that he was not able to understand what was happening in the country. The temperament issue that you raised, though, is also connected to how he responded in the hearing.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting chapter, and it's an interesting part of the book, too, because for the first time, you reveal, when you were asked if you had had a Me Too moment, you revealed your own very private experience with a sexual assault.
I chose one very quick paragraph to acknowledge that I had been in the same place that other women had. And I think part of that is again, sometimes you think that those in positions of responsibility or power, there's somehow or other these, people that are invincible, that they don't have vulnerabilities. Mm-hmm. And it's scary to be vulnerable and to share certain things. But I saw the strength of so many women during that time when the Kavanaugh hearings were going on. Women who were afraid to speak up, but felt that they needed to. And in speaking up, they empowered other women to do the same. And so it was something important to say. I don't talk about it, but I think it was important to acknowledge that for many, many women, this has been real.
Mm-hmm. The title of that chapter is No More Silence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There was a lot going on at that time.
Senator, you are from the same state as Sarah Palin, mm-hmm. and you have an interesting perspective on her. You call her an Alaskan embarrassment in the book, and you also write this: Sarah Palin didn't know she was helping start a movement. She became the prototype for Donald Trump, the showman without principle. You think she was sort of the person that paved the way for Donald Trump?
I don't know that it was so much that she paved the way as that there was a sense going on in the country, and it's kind of this populist movement, and she just kind of fit. You know, kind of an unlikely candidate, right? A mayor from a small town outside of Anchorage, Wasilla, Alaska, gets kind of catapulted onto the front lines. When she became governor, she beat my dad. When she became governor, she was very much a. I mean, she was a populist. I think is probably the best way to say it. She was one that wasn't really firm with the policies that she wanted to direct. But if it was going to sound good, let's go ahead and do this. And she had, I think she has, I shouldn't say it in the past tense because I think it's still there. She has a connection that she makes with people that they just, you know, they're captivated by her. Mm-hmm. And so she has that charisma, that draw. We saw that play out in Alaska. I think that was one of the reasons that captivated John McCain and had him make that decision. Mm-hmm. And then again, we see that same kind of personality in President Trump.
But it's clear you don't like her type of politics and disagree with her on a lot. After the Access Hollywood came out at the very end of that 2016 campaign, and Sarah Palin quickly dismissed the Access Hollywood tape and called it just locker room talk. You write in the book, you were dismayed that then a bunch of the male Republican colleagues were then saying, yeah, it's just a bunch of let boys be boys, locker room talk.
You know, it's somebody that's running for the President of the United States. And so, to me, it was disqualifying from the get-go, and I said that. You know, to take it back just a sec to Sarah Palin, I think it's important to know that the thing that kind of separated us. I'm a policy person. I want to try to work policy. I'm really interested in that, and I want to work with people that are going to try to advance good policy. And Sarah wasn't focused on that. That was not her deal. And so to me that was frustrating. And I want to see good governance in my state. And so you had an individual that was less interested in the policy than in some of the personalities that went on. And so that was kind of where we were.
You write, I've never let Donald Trump get to me. How have you mastered Trump's Washington?
I am still a little bit of a stranger in Washington, but I am at home in Alaska. And the way that I have mastered Washington, D.C. is by staying focused on Alaska. That's what anchors me. It's what clears my head. It's going to take me 12 hours to get there. It's going to be a 4-hour time difference, and it's going to be worth every minute in that seat because I can get home. I can connect with people that are focused on real things that matter, and I get kind of filled up. That's how I think I have been surviving is, and I shouldn't say surviving because I think I'm doing okay. I think I'm doing better than surviving. But I think it's because I'm focused on what am I doing for Alaska? Because as long as I'm focused on that, I can get through the stuff. I can get through the petty politics. That's how I think I have mastered Trump's Washington, is staying focused on my Alaska.